Hello? Can you guys hear me? Can anyone hear me? Okay, very cool. This is the first time I'm actually doing this, so I'm a little bit, well, not the first time. I used to do this all the time back in the day when we were starting the brand, and I wanted people to kind of like hear a little bit about us. Today is actually pretty exciting because I'm drinking a wine that we haven't released yet. Um, it's a cool story. So we're actually naming this wine better than Sauvignon Blanc or better than Sauvignon B, depending on what fits in the label. And this should be coming out within the month. And basically, it's our version of a clear, like crisp, refreshing white wine that isn't Sauvignon Blanc because at this point we think Sauvignon Blanc is a little bit overdone and boring. But more than that, the reality is, well, it's not overdone and boring. The reality is we like to support American winemakers. We have a difficult time. We had a great Sauvignon Blanc that we launched the brand with, but our winemaker retired, the one that used to make that wine for us. And so now we're on the hunt for a great Sauvignon Blanc. Really, what makes the most sense for us is to go to somewhere in like New Zealand, which is a famous Sauvignon B region at this point, but we don't particularly like that style Sauvignon Blanc. And so what we think is better than Sauvignon Blanc, really most of the time, especially at this kind of like $30 price point, is Riesling. And this is a little sample of what we're going to be releasing soon. It's not just Riesling. This is a field blend from Oregon. So it's going to have all these kind of cold weather white wine grapes that are traditionally grown there. Pinot Grigio, well, Pinot Gris in the case of Oregon, Riesling, some Gewürztraminer. So very aromatic, very fresh, pretty beautiful. And so this, yeah, it's just like a everything you want in a Sauvignon Blanc minus the, let's say, potential cat pee nose that people don't really like sometimes, and also without the oak treatment. And the beauty of it being from Oregon is that it is organic and biodynamic. And so I think it'll be delicious and it's going to sell like crazy. But if you're checking out here, this is an experiment. You can see I'm not anywhere special. This is a green screen where we shoot most of our ads. It's in my garage because that's how we do things. And I have two bottles here. If you haven't seen these yet, if all you've seen is our old bottles, these are new labels. And so we have a incredible, very talented new young designer who helped us come out with this kind of new identity, which people have said looks a little bit like if Orange Swift were black and white. I take that very well. I don't think that is a negative thing to say. If we have 10% of the success Dave Finney, the founder of Orange Swift, had in his career, it would be a lifelong dream. Anyway, welcome everyone. I'm going to finish this white wine, then we'll get to talking a little bit. Wonder if anyone else had some really good wine this weekend. It's really nice weekend here at home. This wine is what we're calling Forget Napa Cab. It's one of the wines that had the kind of biggest success for us since we launched. We kind of launched officially, I guess, like March 3rd this year, and it's been tremendous to the point where we ran out of this wine twice already. And the first time we were able to call the winemaker and say, hey, can we have a little bit more of that wine? And the winemaker who had made that wine said, well, I don't really have that exact wine. I have a version of it where I blended a little bit more Merlot in it, which meant that we couldn't even name the wine Cabernet Sauvignon. We had to call it a blend, even though there wasn't that much Merlot in it, but the rules are the rules. In case you don't know, in California, a wine needs to be at least 25, less than 25% of a secondary or tertiary grape for you to be able to call it something specific. So if you want to call something Cabernet Sauvignon, you need to have more than 75% Cab. Same thing is actually true with the origin of the wine. And so if you see a wine that says Napa or if you see a wine that says California, at least 75% of the wine needs to come from California. And this is actually pretty interesting because I don't know if you guys know this. There's a big court case going on out there because there's a bunch of wineries in California that import cheap wine from Europe and hack the tax credit system in order to blend 75% Californian wines with 25% of another country's wine, which is much cheaper, increase their margins, not even tell you that the wine is from another country, and then collect the tax credits that way. So when we do things here to our detriment, we are extremely transparent. We'll tell you that we don't make wine, right? Bruno, I like to say, is a winery without a winery. We hire winemakers we like. Sometimes we tell them, I want a wine in this style. Can we make something? Sometimes they call us and say, hey, I have this friend who's in trouble. He has this much wine. Maybe we can blend something together for you and you get wine that way. Sometimes it's an incredible winery that just made too much wine. Because their price points are so high, they can't sell it all. They don't want to lower their prices, and they sell wine to us under NDA. So we do a little bit of everything, and we think that's the way it's supposed to be. I think people getting too caught up in the story of the terroir and the winery and the 500-year-old recipe that came from Europe. First of all, a lot of that stuff is BS. But second of all, at the end of the day, what matters is how much are you paying and what's in your glass. And we think absolutely everyone on our website is a wonderful cost price ratio, QPR. This is kind of what is today our entry level wine, but will soon be our mid level wine. Like I was saying, it's called Forget Napa Cab. And why Forget Napa Cab? Well, it's from Sonoma. Why do we call it Forget Napa Cab? Well, we have this kind of terrible habit of when we're naming the wines, just thinking, well, if somebody were to ask what wine is this, how would you respond? And our thought process with this one was, well, somebody asked me for a recommendation for a Napa Cab. My answer would be Forget Napa Cab, right? Everyone knows Napa Cab is great. Napa Cab is big and juicy. The fruit carries through. The weather in Napa is spectacular most years, so it's very difficult to have a really bad vintage. It fits the American palate perfectly. We like to eat a lot of red meat, and the wines tend to be nice and rich. But the reality is, they've reached price points that are, I'm not going to say unsustainable, but obnoxious is the word I'm looking for. The thought of paying $150 for what is now an unspectacular bottle of wine coming from California is something that grinds on us. And so when we set out to find a $50 or lower cab, we went straight to Sonoma. We could have gone to Washington State. They make incredible wines, and that might be the next place we go to. But this iteration of Forget Napa Cab, which as I was saying is our third, is from Sonoma County, a few smaller appellations. We couldn't really give it a specific appellation name because we blended wines from smaller appellations. Again, nothing was 75% from one place, but it's phenomenal. The guys that made it actually have 190 plus point wines. What does that mean? Well, it means, first of all, they've been in business a long time. Second of all, they submit every wine they make effectively to tasters. And third of all, they're really freaking good. And so whenever we found ourselves in need of more cab, because the other iterations that they sold out immediately, we sent them a sample and we said, this is the style of wine we want. Can you please help us make some? And lo and behold, they made something beautiful. Now, I will say, as I open this, the other versions of Forget Napa Cab, our first two iterations of it, were from 2020. And so what people really, really loved about that wine is that it already had 5 years of age on it, which means as you pop the cork, it was absolutely perfect. It was ready to drink. It didn't need any time to decant, and it was a soft and gorgeous wine. This wine will get there. It will get there. It has the same great characteristics. It's not a massive sugar bomb. It's not a massive oak bomb. It's super refined, but at the end of the day, it's a young bottle. It's from 2023. And so what that means is when you get this bottle, you want to decant it for a bit. It doesn't need a lot of time. But if you open the bottle, you pop it in your glass immediately, like I'm about to do. So good. You might not be able to kind of enjoy the wine for what it really is. So if you end up buying bottle Forget Napa Cab, do yourself a favor, You can pour a little taste just to make sure it's fine, but put it aside, get a little jug. I don't have any decanters right here in my garage, I would hope. We do have wine crap everywhere, but no decanters. And just let it sit 30 minutes, 40 minutes. That's enough. Yeah, it's such a beautiful nose on this one. There's so much red fruit. Gorgeous. It on the nose originally, as I was saying before you let it open, it has a little bit of mintiness that sometimes when people are going through blind tastings and they put that on the nose and they smell mint as opposed to, let's say, bell pepper, that's a telltale sign that you're drinking Cab, right? Sometimes you can confuse it with Merlot. A lot of people do. It's easier to tell a Merlot apart from the Cab on the palate than it is just on the nose if you're not that experienced, which most of us are not. Um, I don't even consider myself an experienced blind taster. It's a skill that you need to train. But on that actual point, people sometimes go, "Oh, I don't know anything about wine. I can't tell one apart from the other. My tasting skills are subpar." And my answer to that is always the same. It's to say, listen, um, tasting wine is not something that falls from the heavens. In the same way that going to the gym, nobody's born kind of jacked. You have to train, you have to get better at it. And the people who are very good at tasting wine blind, the way they learn is to say, well, white wines, they'll categorize things. And so they say a white wine has these potential smells, a red wine has those potential smells, and you go through the list. And so as I'm sticking my nose in here, I'm not looking for something that jumps out of the glass at me. I'm saying, well, it's a red wine. Um, what are the primary aromas? Meaning, what fruit does it smell like? Does it smell like peaches? Well, no, because no red wine is supposed to smell like peaches. If you smell peaches, you can call it out, but it's extremely unlikely. So I'm going for, let's say, red and black fruit. So can I smell blackberries? Yes, I can smell blackberries. Can I smell raspberries? Yes, I can smell raspberries. Some black plums. There's not a lot of cherry on this one. Blueberries, currants. And so I'm going through the list of red and blue and black fruit that I can think of and going, yes, 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 no, no, no. And the more you practice it, the quicker it becomes. It becomes second nature. So don't freak out if you say, like, I don't know how to taste wine. Well, nobody sat you down and taught you, and then you probably never practiced it. So it's something that comes to you if you wanted to, and it's not that important. The whole point of Bruno when we started the brand, and still to this day, is that you can come online with a faint idea of what you want. I want wine to impress my boss, and we'll have that bottle for you so that it's a no-brainer for you, and that if you're serving it to somebody who's a big nerd, they'll first of all take a look at the bottle and be like, "Oh my God, I can't possibly like expect this to be good," and then get knocked on their ass when it is, right? We get this comment all the time. People look at the bottle, they can't get over it. They think it's too tongue-in-cheek, too like what's the word I'm looking for here? Rebellious? No, rebellious is a little. In any case, they kind of don't think much of it, and then they stick their nose in the glass and go, "Oh wow, this is serious." Oh wow, and it's spectacular. It has the kind of silky tannins that you expect. They're present. They'll dry out your mouth. If you're having a steak, it's incredible for that. The old iteration of this wine was my favorite wine in the bunch, and the new one pretty much is. This is our what we call our $100 cab, and so as I was explaining, we try to give them names that are on the nose. What is this? Well, forget Napa Cab. What is this? This is a $100 bottle of cab, right? Of course, we don't sell it for $100, but the people who sold this wine to us do sell it for $100. And this is one of those clear cases of, well, it's a tough market. The wineries have to sell. And if you are a winery, think about what that means in terms of cash flows, right? It means you're paying people all year long. And most of the time, you are selling wine a couple months out of the year, right? You're bottling your reds very likely in early summer. You're bottling your whites in late spring, give or take. And so you bottle your whites. If you don't sell direct to consumer like we do, you're selling to a distributor. That's basically open season to sell the wines. In an ideal world, you go out, you sell all your white once a year, you sell all your red, and you really make money a couple months out of the year while your expenses are year round. Why, right? This is so risky. Can you imagine if you had a business that only made money basically 2 months out of the year? And so this is because, first of all, the way the wine industry in the US works is wineries are only allowed to sell to two different people, either a distributor or to a customer like you. Well, if you're not like us, meaning if you don't know how to sell stuff online, if you don't know how to run ads, it's a very different proposition than running a winery typically works. It means you only have one client, which is a distributor. If you're selling wine to a distributor, um, like I said, twice a year, you're bleeding cash, you take on so much risk, right? And so a lot of wineries, even the successful ones, will sometimes turn to people like us who they know love to buy incredible wine and maybe help them de-risk their finances a little bit and give our customers a great deal. And they'll say, hey, I have this much wine. Would you like to buy some? We'll sell it to you without a bottle, without a label. That's all on you. You come, you bottle the wine, you take it away. And as long as you promise not to tell people who we are. And sometimes they don't want to tell people who they are. These are both cases of kind of NDA wines. Sometimes they will. So our bubbly that sold out like immediately last year was one of those cases. Our winemaker LJ was very happy to tell people who made it, although of course he works with us. Um, but these two wines are just spectacular NDA wines. If they were to go through the three-tier system, like I mentioned, of selling from the winery to a distributor to a retailer, they would probably cost 30% more, right? And so I try to tell people um, it's a better deal to buy direct from us. First of all, because we don't have any alternative. That's the only way we sell. The other reason is just we're removing an entire step in the value chain, right? Well, technically two, but I need to market my own product. And so because I have to market, I have that expense in terms of marketing. But you're still getting rid of effectively a 30% markup that would happen along the way. So you're drinking the same extremely high quality wines as you would from a very reputable brand. You're just getting it for less. And for what it's worth, I think our bottles look second to none. Like, I don't think these look any, let's say, less refined than anything you'd find in a wine shop. Um, it just so happens that we're living in 2025, and the wine industry is a very different place other than it was maybe a decade ago, right? You have only three large distributors in the United States that basically control about 80% of wine sales. And so what ends up happening is if you're a small winery like us, right, we're selling about 2,500 cases of wine a year, meaning 30,000 bottles. It's our first year, so don't judge. We'll get there. But the issue becomes these distributors don't care about you, right? If you're making 30,000 bottles, that's just not enough revenue for them to care. And so even if they decide to represent you in a few states, they don't really have they don't have any incentive to push your product, because even if they sell out, it doesn't move their needle, right? What ends up happening then is that these wineries have to go out and hire their own salespeople. Their salespeople go out to make a sale. They incur that extra cost, and then these distributors became glorified transportation companies, glorified 3PLs, right? It's a horrible system that really, really, really doesn't help the small wineries. The flip side of this is wineries have spent the last 50 years selling this way. They can't necessarily sell direct to consumer. We don't care about the retailers. We're not here to make friends with retailers. We're not here to beg them to carry our wine. We're here to beg you to drink our wine and tell you about the wine. And so I can price my wine exactly as I see fit. If I were at a traditional winery and were to say, I want to sell this wine for $75 on my website, you would have to make sure that that wine would sell for $75 at retail, because otherwise retailers wouldn't carry you and you would sell nothing and you would go bankrupt. And so these wineries, what's the point of buying direct, right? Unless you're selling you something that only exists when you buy direct. And really, how can you even be sure, right? There's no reason. You are better off, and I say this as a winery owner, you're better off if somebody isn't making something specifically to sell direct to consumer, to go out to Total Wine, or even better to a small neighborhood wine shop and patronize them, because you're helping the winery by buying their wine. You're helping the wine shop owner, and that's a difficult business. And on top of that, you're building a relationship with somebody who's going to learn your taste, right? So my whole thing is like, either buy direct from wineries like us that have no obligation to have price matches with the retailers, or just go to your friendly neighborhood wine store. So that's it. That's my rant for the day. But I had somebody in the chat asking me how the brand's going. We're actually doing very well. And I think beyond what we could have imagined was going to happen in their first year. Um, Wine is a very personal thing. We took many risks with our branding. We took many risks with the wines we started with. I'll tell you a little story. When I was thinking of starting this brand, I didn't know whether I was going to go the difficult route, which is the route we ended up taking, of going through a going directly to wineries that I like and respect, and knowing that I was going to get a lot of no's, or going to one of these big wine brokerages. And that does exist, right? You can buy wine as if you were buying a car. You go to a broker and you say, hey, I want a, I don't know, Merlot from Napa Valley. Can you find me some? And they'll go out and they'll hunt for wine for you. And there's absolutely no passion in this, right? You're not supporting necessarily winemakers who you know and respect. These winemakers don't necessarily farm the way that you want them to farm. Our wines are all organic. These two wines are actually biodynamic, which is amazing. And they're basically natural wines. We just don't call them that because natural wines tend to suck more than they are good. But these are natural wines that don't taste like natural wines. They just taste like beautiful wines. But yeah, we decided not to go the route of having a broker. But while I was doing my due diligence, I did meet with a lady who sells wine for what is still the greatest success case in direct-to-consumer wine sales online. So I'm not going to say his name, but he sold his wine company for millions of dollars, and he never sold in real shops. And so, massive inspiration. I go to talk to this lady who claims to have sold all his wines, and I'm telling her about these spectacular NDA finds that I had. Our $100 Pinot is one of those. I told her about the other one, the Sauvignon Blanc that we were in and out of, the first iteration of this cab that was made by a guy called Matt Pretzel. And she's asking me, well, what's your price point? And I'm saying, well, my cab's about $40 and my Pinot Noir is about $60. They're both wines that the cab could sell for 75 at a shop, and I know for a fact that the Pinot Noir sells for 120. The person who actually makes it, and she told me I was out of my mind, that I had to sell $18.99 wine or $23.99, otherwise I was going to go broke, right? And so I tell you this to say I'm very surprised, because people are taking a chance on a brand that they've never seen before, and yet I don't want to talk too specifically in terms of numbers, but last month, over a third of our sales came from people who had purchased our wine already, right? Which is incredible, because we effectively launched this wine brand in March. So we're saying that within, let's say, 6 months, people had not only bought wine, they came back to buy more wine. And so that's an incredible kind of proof of concept for me. Makes me happy, makes me proud of our product sourcing, and just excited to keep going. So again, this is our Forget Napa Cab. It's been in the glass now. I've been on this rant for about 20 minutes. And the wine just completely changed. It's just soft. It's just softness. The red fruit kind of turned into blue and black fruit a little bit more. It has what wine nerds call minerality. And some people don't know what that means. A lot of them say like, oh, does it taste like salt, or what do you mean by minerals? It's a controversial topic. Deep down, it just means like when you're done drinking the wine, there's a little bit like of a hint of, did I kind of lick a rock. And that sounds kind of goofy, but it's a delicious thing that people freak out about. And it's truly the telltale sign of a really complex and good wine is if it has that minerality. Most wine geeks are kind of obsessive about it. So yeah, that's our Forget Napa Cab. We put the name here in the back so you don't forget. This is something else. Like, I mean, we don't need to make sure that our labels say anything because we're not on shelves. And so we can just dedicate all the real estate to art. And I think that's cool. I might open the $100 cab, even though I'm here alone and the baby's in bed and my wife isn't drinking, because I want to tell you a little bit about this wine. This wine comes from a region of Sonoma called Alexander Valley, which is basically, if you know kind of thing, if you don't want to overpay for a Napa wine. The people that make this wine, first of all, it's a female winemaker that is a beast, a legend, incredible. And it takes a very interesting blend of California and Bordeaux. Why do I say that? First of all, it's a Bordeaux style Cabernet. So they do blend in some Petit Syrah, they do blend in some Cabernet Franc, they do blend in some Merlot, but it's still a Cabernet Sauvignon, right? We can still label it as such. But it's so deep. Wines from Bordeaux are not usually this, let's say, deep is just the right word, so I'm just going to repeat it. They tend to be a little bit lighter because it's Europe and it's a little bit colder, but Alexander Valley makes a beautiful kind of in-between Napa and Bordeaux. And this has this kind of smoky, a little bit of olives, coffee taste going on that I think is spectacular. I think in terms of labels, if you're somebody that's turned off by the kind of grill smiley face on this wine, and you want something that's truly going to impress and you don't have to say anything, this is a very kind of serious style label, beautiful wax cover, and the wine is even more impressive. We just took it this weekend to a beautiful French restaurant here in Miami, which is where I live, which is funny given that our winery is in Portland. But sommelier was absolutely obsessed with this wine. So I'll open it in a little bit, but yeah, just want to talk about that. Let me talk a little bit about what's coming up. So I mentioned that we're launching a new white wine. We're also launching probably a couple of bubblies by the time the year's up. And really, it's all a factor of being able to, let's say, sell quickly enough to take that those sales and reinvest into wine, right? Wine is a very funny business. It's not like selling t-shirts, as I like to tell people. When you're selling t-shirts, okay, you go out, you sell them. I ran out of t-shirts. Well, you have the proceeds from the last sale. You can have new t-shirts made in 30 days. Your stock is replenished and you're good to go. And so it's a very capital efficient business, right? When you're talking about wine, it's nothing like that. Because in theory, you only make wine once a year, right? And so if I bought this wine this year and it's done, what do you do then, right? And in the meantime, like every other winery, you're still paying your employees, you're still going. And so if you take the proceeds from this sale and you sell out of a wine in 3 months, well, you're paying for 9 more months of operational expenses until you get the next version of that wine. And so we're in a very funny situation where we're growing very much because people are loving our product. Well, at the same time, it's a massive problem to get inventory through the door, right? So we're looking to do a blowout Black Friday sale so we can keep financing all these incredible wines that we find and expand our portfolio so that at the end of the day, if it's cold, we have the perfect wine for that. And if it's hot, we have the perfect wine for that. And if you want a wine for the boat, it comes in boat appropriate packaging because we have enough inventory for that, and so on. So we're going to do a joint Black Friday Bruno unofficial launch birthday that's coming up. We're going to do it a little bit earlier than Black Friday because, as we also know, people drink wine during Thanksgiving. So it just makes sense to give you an opportunity to buy wine at the best prices of the year a little bit earlier in the month. So around this beginning of the second week of November is when we're going to launch our Bruno birthday slash Black Friday, Cyber Monday. The deals are going to be incredible. You're probably going to be able to get this wine for the price of this one. So I would keep my notifications on. We're also going to do a bunch of incredible bundles to kind of have you through the end of the year. And we hope to really sell out of wine by December, because that way we can all take a chill pill in dry January. We'll partake as well and get back on the saddle in February of next year with even more incredible wine. So this is where I ask people here, and I'm not going to be able to answer because I'm not even looking at this live feed, but what do you kind of hate about wine culture? What do you love? Um, what do you wish you could change when you're buying wine? Where do you buy wine? Help us understand how we can serve you. What throws you off about buying wine online? Is it the fact that it takes a week to get there? Is it the fact that if you've never tasted the wine? Well, if I offer you a money back guarantee, is that sufficient to get you to maybe consider it? Or if I tell you it'll get there in a day, what would move the needle for you? Is it that wine is boring? Or is it that it's just not refreshing? Do you feel like drinking wine in a beer situation makes you uncool? So let me know, because these are all things we're trying to figure out as we go on, right? Anyway, that's it for tonight. This is just a test that I was running to see if people would join in. Let me know if there's any theme you want me to approach. I can do this again many, many times. And I hope everyone has a great rest of your Sunday. Cheers.